It Takes Two, Amy Eiler, J.J. Gordon. Amy is out. Will Thompson's in. She's going to be real jealous because we brought Brent Brandt in, and Brent invited his friend Stephen Tobolowsky, which we got to tease yesterday that he was going to be on the air with us. And if you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, hold on. I know that name. I can picture it. What's that movie that I love him from? Well, good news. We put together a supercut to remind you of all the great things that he's done. So, Will Thompson, if you would please.
Watch out for that first step. It's a doozy.
Take a look at the conjoined triangles of success. Now, what do those two triangles make together?
A square?
A box.
There's only so much I can do. The talent is driving the train on this one. But I will put in a call. Josh Groban. He's coming to the PTA event.
Who is Josh Groban?
Who is Josh Groban? Kill yourself!
You idiots! These are not them. You've captured their stunt doubles.
Keep me Joe.
For my cholesterol, so I don't die. Now, simplicity, I want to clear this up. Simplicity does not mean simple-minded. It just means that we didn't have cell phones or computers or automatic transmissions, and we thought wrestling was real.
I don't know. I've never been out of the country. Look, I think they want us to leave.
Sit down, Morgan. Oh, talk to me. You know what? I really love the sound of your voice.
Really? I always thought it was kind of nasal and pinched.
Oh, no, not at all. It's lovely.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. Stephen Tobolowsky, Tobo, to his friends. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, JJ. Oh, my God. That was like a walk through my life.
Here's the tough part when you're trying to make a Stephen Tobolowsky supercut. There is so much. There is so much you can pull from, and there are so many great elements. It's hard to whittle it down. The first one we put together, Stephen, was an hour and a half long.
We had to take the Mississippi burning stuff out, though.
No. Yeah, the white supremacist racist stuff didn't fly on early morning radio, I guess.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Okay, so Let's start with this. Fargo's got a place in your heart, I assume, because you had such a great time when you were up here with Brent last time. Are you itching to make it back to the Dakotas anytime soon?
I'm itching to get back to the Dakotas as soon as I can. And, who would know? Fargo is amazing. My wife, Annie, and I, we came, and Brent Brandt was just the most insanely great host in the world. And he put us in his car and drove us all over the Dakotas, and it was incredible. And Fargo was spectacular. But I found that a lot of times geology is personal with people. And for me, the landscape of the Dakotas is fantastic. You have to love it. Well, you don't have to love it because some people don't like that kind of stuff. I found it just extraordinary. Well, I grew up in Texas, but the wide open spaces and the rocks and it was just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to come back.
Oh, good. I'm glad you could find the beauty in it because some people compare it to the ocean and the idea that the horizon seems to go on forever and it can be a little daunting.
It is daunting, and that's what I love. And I love the foreverness about it. For me, it was beautiful, and for my wife, Annie, but we're both rock hounds, so we loved it. We loved it.
All right, we can't do the whole interview about how much you love North Dakota. I mean, we'll let our tourism organization pay you for that at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about a couple of things, and we have a limited amount of time, so if you don't mind, it's going to be a little rapid fire. Is that all right?
You're the boss.
Okay, let's start with this. Number one, what's the role you don't get approached for a lot, but you love it when people come up and talk to you about it?
The role, probably Sammy Jenkins, Memento.
That's so funny because Will Thompson, the producer here, when we were talking yesterday about how you were coming on, that was the first movie I thought of that was for you.
It was, because when we were doing that movie, Chris, wasn't like a superstar director at the time. That was one of his first projects. And it was just, we all jumped in and we had no idea that we were touching the third rail of entertainment. It was such a great script. And a lot of times when you work on a great script, sometimes the movie doesn't turn out great. But Memento turned out to be great, and I absolutely loved working on it every second of it.
Yeah, we were trying to find a clip from Memento, and there's really not one that lends itself well to being on the radio, if you can guess that.
Yeah, I don't want to believe. I remember the audition for that is that I read the script, and most movie scripts are about 120 pages. It's supposed to be a minute per every page, and a first draft is 2 hours, 120 pages. The script for Memento, the first one was something like 360 pages, 400. It was like Gone with the Wind. And I'm thinking like, well, this has got to be the worst script in the world. And I read it, and Annie said like, well, what do you think? I said, it's probably the best movie script I've ever read in my life. Wow. And I couldn't believe it. I had no real lines in it, but I called my agent and said, I have to audition for Chris on this. And they go, well, there's not much to do for Sammy. I said, I need to go in. So I went and met him, and he said, well, Stephen, there's not really a scene for you to audition with. And I said, Chris, the deal is this. People are going to read this script, and everyone's going to want to be in it because it's so great. But I promise you, I will be the only person who's going to read for Sammy Jenkins who actually has had amnesia in their life. And he goes, you had amnesia? And in fact, Brent, did I tell you this story?
Yep, I know this story. It's a great story.
Oh, God, yeah. So I had surgery, kidney stone surgery, and they tried an experimental drug on me where I was awake, but you forget the pain. This is what they tell big patients so nurses don't have to lift them and put them on operating tables. They say, could you please walk in the operating room? Thank you. Get on the table. Thank you. And then they operate on you, and you don't remember the pain. But like any general anesthesia, it took like a week for it to wear off. And so after the surgery, for a week, I would be in the living room of our home, and I would just have half a glass of water. And I had no idea where I had come from or where I was going, if I had drunk the water or if I was taking the half glass back to, I had no idea. And so I told Chris this story and ended up getting the part. So that was fabulous opportunity for me. Loved the movie.
All right. I'd love for you to tell a little bit about your audition story to get. First of all, I got to tell you, I am a massive fan of the Tobolowsky Files. I've been listening to it for years. In fact, we include a cut from this episode number 2, Local Hero. I've listened to that episode maybe 30 times, and that is no joke, Tobo.
Local Hero, yeah, the hippopotamus, right?
Yeah, Bubbles.
Bubbles, the hippopotamus. And after, Bubbles died, the hippo.
Yep.
God, it was so tragic. And with the death of Bubbles, it was a great story at first. Like this hippopotamus had escaped from the wildlife park, and everybody was so excited that somewhere in the wilds was this hippo running around, until the story turned tragic, and they shot a tranquilizer dart to tranquilize Bubbles, but Bubbles collapsed on a log, and the log pressed against Bubbles' diaphragm, and the hippo died. And so the outcry was incredible. The tears of people, and they had a local junior high, I believe it was, renamed their school to Bubbles Junior High School. So this is the only junior high school in California that was named after a hippopotamus. So and they had songs that they played on the all hail, Bubbles Junior High. So this was the story of our local hero until about a couple weeks later in the wildlife park, they found they were cleaning up the hippo cage, and there was a hippo running around there, and the hippos had their name tags around their around their front leg, whatever. And the name tag said Bubbles. So Bubbles was not the hippo that had escaped. Bubbles was still alive in the wildlife park. It was another hippo. And so Bubbles Junior High School ended up being the only junior high school probably in the country named after a living hippopotamus.
And honestly, those are the type of stories that you get with the Tobolowsky Files. It's just such a phenomenal podcast, and how long have you been doing that podcast now, Stephen?
David and I did it. Oh gosh, it must have been for about 10 years, off and on. And we did. Now we have 99 episodes, and I believe it's on Apple Podcasts, and it's free. We wanted to do it free of charge. There's no paywall. Because I thought something in the world that's good should be free. So we have I guess you could, if you go on to anything on the internet, go Tobolowsky Files and type in local hero, you will be able to hear the Bubble story for free.
And then just start playing each episode after that. And here's what I love. You get great insight. So you're making a classic. The episode that you do about Groundhog Day is one of the best film-related podcasts I've ever heard to. Your weird tangential relationship to Fess Parker through his granddaughter is amazing. I mean, all of these things are so good. But then you get episodes like The Pooch, when you come home and you find a dog in your backyard that becomes your dog. I mean, that episode, my wife and I listened to on a road trip, and we immediately listened to it again because we were so enthralled at this relationship you shared with a dog.
Yeah, it was, and I wasn't a dog person, and not at all. And I don't want to spoil the episode, but do you remember the name of the picture? Oh, It's Not My Dog. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the name of that podcast is It's Not My Dog. And that is, I had found this starving dog. My girlfriend and I went on a camping trip. And when we came back to our home, there was this starving dog in our backyard. And I'm going like, how did the dog get in our backyard? Because it was completely enclosed. And while we were gone, our house sitter was having a party in our absence. And during the party, this dog came, and everybody thought this was hilarious, and they gave it some salami or treats they tried to give it a margarita, and when we were coming back, the house sitter left the dog there, and the dog had no food, no water, no nothing. So we get back from camping trip, and there's this dog that's dying in our backyard. And so the first thing I have to do is take the dog to the vet, and I'm going to try to get it healed and then put it up for adoption. And on the way to the vet, the dog has diarrhea all over the front seat of my car and me. So when we get to the vet, we're not winning any friends. We are not winning any. We go back there, and the doctor tells me that the dog is probably going to die. Should they put her down or treat her? And I can't say put her down. So I said, treat the dog. And the refrain is, listen, man, it's not my dog. It's not my decision. It's not my dog. Just, I don't know, just treat the dog and we'll put it up for adoption. And it turned out to be my dog. And I was never a dog person until I met this dog. And what they say about a dog cherishing you if you save its life. The Pooch cherished me and was my dog. And it was a beautiful relationship, and it changed my life. And that's a great story. I did that live for an audience of about 500 pet lovers at this dog group not long ago, and not a dry eye in the house. It was a terrific event. I just loved it. Good. Not My Dog. That's a good one in the podcast.
He's an actor, a writer, a podcaster, storyteller, a horse rider, an accomplished horse rider in many ways. And listen to the Tobolowsky Files, and you'll find out how deep and important that is to who he is today. Stephen, before we go any further, let's talk about the fact that you've written books, and books that are incredibly good and engaging. I've got both of them sitting on my shelf at home right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess my first book I wrote was The Dangerous Animals Club. And that was one of those kind of stories. I was at Sarah Silverman's house. She was having a party, and I was telling kind of a story to someone there. He says, well, you ought to write that story down and send it to my agent. So I wrote the story down, sent it to his agent. The agent said, I ought to get you in touch with Simon & Schuster. And they immediately signed me to do a series of stories, some of them based on stories from my podcast and some just coming up with new ones. And so it's The Dangerous Animals Club, about me growing up in Texas in all the wilds of I kind of grew up in the woods, and so me kind of growing up there hunting snakes and frogs and all sorts of things. And my life growing up in Texas, that was Dangerous Animals Club. And then I was doing Californication, and the editor of Simon & Schuster, my editor, Ben Lonan, what came out to California, and I was about to shoot a naked scene. I remember for Californication, we always had to shoot those naked scenes.
Yeah, they really made you do a lot as Stu on that show. They asked a lot of you.
They asked a lot of me. So I was about to do a naked scene, and I go over to meet my editor, and he says, well, everybody loves Dangerous Animals Club. There always seems to be a spiritual bent to your stories. Can you do another book where you have stories that have this kind of, where you accent more the spiritual bent? And I'm about to have to go do this orgy scene, and I'm trying to think rapidly through I said, I got it, Ben. I could do another book. I could call it My Adventures with God. And these are all true stories of events that happened to me. Because, see, all of us have these, like the Old Testament mirrors the pattern of all of our lives. All of us have a Genesis. These are stories we usually tell on a first date over a first glass of Chardonnay about who we are and where we came from, and if the date is going well, our fears and our hopes and dreams. That's Genesis. Then all of us go into slavery, like the book of Exodus. In fact, some of us stay in graduate school forever. Then somehow in the middle of our life, we end up lost in the desert. We have nowhere we're going, like in the book of Leviticus. And then mortality comes into our life, like the book of Numbers, and we lose people, the people we love, and we're changed by death. And then if we're lucky, Ben, we get to the book of Deuteronomy, where we're able to tell our stories to our children, just like Moses told the stories of the children of Israel to the children of Israel as to why they've been walking for all these years in the desert because they forgot where they were going and what they were doing. And Ben goes, that's the book. Write that book. So My Adventures with God is real stories that happened to me. Let's see, me being held hostage at gunpoint in a grocery store. Yeah, that happened to me. Me getting thrown from a horse in Iceland on top of an active volcano and breaking my neck. Yeah, that happened to me. Incredible stories, romantic stories, stories of falling in love. So My Adventures with God has, again, all these kind of true stories. So they're both very enjoyable books. And after I did that, then I went off and did the naked scene in Californication.
Brent, you got a question for Tobo.
Tobo, you have a million stories, and here's one that is going to be in your next book. Remember when we were in Moorhead and we ate at a restaurant? You got a quick little story about that?
this happens to me all the time, but it was so perfect. You mean the waitress?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, this is ridiculous. So anyway, the waitress came up to me at the time, and everything in the Dakotas, they advertise free pie.
That's right.
I don't know how you guys keep afloat. It's like free pie at every restaurant. So we had this restaurant. I was there mainly for the free pie, and the waitress came up to me and says, "You know, you look exactly like that fella on television. Has anyone ever told you that before?" And I go, "Well, yes, ma'am, actually, people have." She says, I mean it. You look exactly like that fella." And so I told her the kind of pie I went. She went back behind the counter, and I saw that she was there with a couple other waitresses going on the internet, looking at, looking at pictures. And she says, I'm here to tell you, you are the spitting image of this guy. You could actually make a living pretending you're this guy. And I said, from your mouth to God's ears, I would like to do that. I certainly would like to make a living being that guy. And so that happens to me all the time.
Then you've said, "I am that guy." And she said, "No, you're not." She would not believe that you were that guy.
No. The waitress who came up afterwards was a young waitress, and she winked at me and she said, "I know who you are. I know you're really the guy, but I just thought, you were having a good time having fun with her." But it was people do that all the time. And I try to explain to people in my family that even though people don't know who I am, everybody recognizes me everywhere in the world. And you would think it's fun, but it's not necessarily fun. But occasionally it's lovely. But they knew who I was in Paris. I was at a coffee shop in Paris, and they knew who I was. They knew who I was in France. I was in the woods in France, going up to a ruin, and a fellow spoke in French and said, "You are the Ned Ryerson from," and then he spoke French, and my wife knows French, and the name of Groundhog Day in France is the Day Without End. So you are the Ned from Day Without End. So people know me everywhere, and it's good. It's usually good. It's not bad, but it's bad sometimes not being able to have any privacy, or just to know you're not going to have privacy anywhere you go is a good warning for everybody.
It's just amazing. They recognize you from so many different things. I mean, it's Thelma and Louise and Spaceballs and
I
guarantee TV shows.
I guarantee that the fact that waitress at the Village Inn recognized you did not get you a bigger slice of pie. It was the same slice that was being served to everybody else, because that's who we are up here in the Dakotas.
That's right. But boy, I tell you, we did go by again for the pie. I got to say, but the free pie seems to be a thing everywhere there. So I guess, you have a lot of day-old pie. But I know from my wife that day-old pie and cake are the best. If you're not going to eat it right out of the oven, you can't do better than a day-old, because, as my wife says, the sugar has a chance to congeal. The sugar changes the formulation of what you're eating, and it's just so much.
The name of this podcast is "The Sugar Has a Chance to Congeal," right there.
Yeah.
It happens so organically. Stephen Tobolowsky, actor, comedian, improviser. We didn't even touch on that. Podcaster, the Tobolowsky Files. Read his books. Seek this out. Just an absolute pleasure. I wish we had 5 more hours, because I know you could fill it. But we really appreciate your time, Stephen. This has been a really great treat for us.
Well, thank you, JJ. It's a thrill to at least be in the Dakotas over the airwaves, because I love it so much.
Fantastic. And Lower Canada, too, eh? So don't worry.
Okay.
We're really getting you all over the place.
And
Okay, that's great.
Tobo and I keep talking. We're going to come back. We're going to do another Dakota tour soon, right, buddy?
That's right.
Good.
We'll do the film fest.
There you go. That's the
perfect.
perfect time to come. I know it's been out for a while, but Stephen Tobolowsky's birthday party. Let's do a screening of that while you're here too.
Hey, yeah.
There you go. See,
Absolutely.
It's not what you know, it's who you know, and we know Brent Brandt, and he's got great friends out there who can share stories and eat up the first hour of the show. It's been so easy. Tobo, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, guys.